I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the disappearance of Suzanne Simpson, a woman married to a wildly successful real estate tycoon named Brad. Well, right now, Brad is not closing any deals because he's locked up and charged with her murder. Here's the story. Suzanne Simpson is a real estate agent from Texas. She's married to a real estate tycoon named Brad Simpson. On Sunday, October 6th, Suzanne and Brad went to a party at the exclusive Argyle Club in Alamo Heights. When they got home, she and Brad allegedly got into a loud shouting match. Afterwards, Suzanne vanished. Afterwards, Brad was spotted buying bags, cement, and a tarp at a Home Depot. And then his phone was locked down, unable to be traced by GPS tracking. From the beginning, Brad was under a cloud of suspicion. In fact, his and Suzanne's daughter believed her father was responsible for her mom's disappearance. 2 months later, Brad was charged with Suzanne's murder, even though her body has not been found. So when you look at a case like this, and it's a missing person, but it's a homicide investigation, but you're also looking for a body. So you've got to look at everything on the day and the time of the disappearance. And that brings us right to our first question in our investigation, which is, what was going on when Suzanne disappeared? You know, who is where? Specifically, Brad and Suzanne. Where are they going? What are they seeing? Where are the locations? So to get a much better idea of this, Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas on the case, on location, walking us through all the various places and the things that were going on around the time of Suzanne's disappearance.
We're here at the Argyle Private Club in San Antonio, Texas. You can see it right here over my back shoulder. And this is where the whole ordeal between Brad and Suzanne Simpson began on October 6th, earlier this year. Witnesses, according to the police affidavit, say they saw Brad and Suzanne here at the Argyle get into some sort of altercation before Suzanne left around 8:30 p.m. and took their 5-year-old daughter with her. Now, after leaving the Argyle Private Club, Suzanne took their daughter here, about a mile away, down the street to this H-E-B store. And according to the police affidavit, surveillance showed that she was only here for just over 10 minutes, from about 8:40 p.m. to 8:51 p.m. Now we're back across the street from Brad and Suzanne Simpson's home, right here over my right shoulder. And this is where the story starts to pick up a little speed. At around 9:15 p.m., after she left the Argyle, after she's left the H-E-B store, Suzanne calls a friend, according to the police documents, and tells him that she's coming over. Now, directly after that, from 9:16 to about 9:24, Suzanne then calls her mother to tell her mother that Brad had assaulted her, hurting her arm and her neck. Now, sometime around the time of that second call to her mother, Suzanne's cell phone service is suspended at a subscriber's request. And according to that police warrant affidavit, this is around the same time Brad's phone accesses an AT&T app. Now, this is where the story starts to thicken. After 10 p.m., a neighbor across the street from the Simpsons' home reports seeing Brad and Suzanne in some sort of physical struggle in their front yard. According to that police document, the neighbor then sees Suzanne run away from Brad and Brad follow. The neighbor says he goes back inside the house to grab a flashlight. He comes back, he doesn't see them, but he hears screams from this wooded area across the street. Now, after 11 p.m., that same neighbor reports hearing Brad's black GMC Sierra crank up and leave the area from the Simpsons' home. And then about an hour after that, so that would be going on about midnight, that neighbor hears Brad's truck return to this area. Now, at 12:33 a.m. on the morning of October 7th, Brad's truck is caught on the property back at this same H-E-B store, the same one that Suzanne was at just a few hours prior, the night of October 6th. But the one key thing to note here is that Brad's truck bed is clear of cargo besides one large ice chest. Now, continuing along on October 7th, according to that police affidavit, surveillance picks up Brad Simpson's black GMC Sierra right here at the Howard Early Childhood Center around 7:53 a.m., dropping off him and Suzanne's 5-year-old daughter. The important thing to note here, surveillance shows in that truck bed there's now 2 large trash bags along with that ice chest. Now at about 9:12 a.m., Brad Simpson, according to the police documents, is picked up here at this Whataburger about 35 minutes away in Boerne, Texas. His truck is seen on surveillance in the drive-thru. Another key thing to note right here, his truck bed now has 3 white trash bags, a large heavy-duty trash can, the ice chest, and now a large bulky item wrapped in a blue tarp with a firewood rack in a fashion to weigh it down. Now, about 40 minutes after Brad Simpson leaves the Whataburger, the police affidavit says he comes right over here around 9:53 a.m. to this Home Depot that's right across the street. Now, while at this Home Depot, it has been logged in those documents that Brad Simpson buys 2 bags of Quikrete cement, a construction bucket with a lid, heavy-duty trash bags, a 30-ounce bottle of Clorox disinfectant, and insect repellent. Now, mind you, the police affidavit also says while he's in this parking lot, he asks a random stranger for directions to the nearest dump, which would be the Kendall County solid waste dump that's only about 10 minutes away. And a key point here, Brad's cell phone is off at this time. So if you look over my shoulders out here in Kendall County, Texas, Boerne, Texas to be exact, you can see that it is pretty remote. We're pretty far away from the civilization, the hustle and bustle of San Antonio, or about 40 minutes out from San Antonio. And that brings us here to the Kendall County solid waste site. Now, according to the police affidavit, after Brad Simpson is recorded at the Home Depot, there's no specific timestamp, but his vehicle location data picks his GMC Sierra, that black truck, up in the area near this solid waste site. And remember, when he was in the parking lot of the Home Depot, he asked a random stranger where the nearest dump was. And this Kendall County solid waste site is only about 8 or 9 minutes away from that Home Depot. Now, at around 11:15 a.m., this is presumably after Brad's truck is leaving the Kendall County solid waste site, surveillance video, according to the police affidavit, shows Brad's truck at this Valero gas station here in Boerne, Texas. You can see it straight ahead. Now, one key thing to note about the surveillance video here at this Valero is that in the bed of his GMC Sierra, the white trash bags are missing now, but the blue tarp, the firewood rack, and the heavy-duty trash can are still visible. Now, in that police affidavit, after the time period after they catch Brad Simpson's truck at the Valero gas station, they list his vehicle location data as traveling for 13 minutes westbound through Bandera County, Texas, before turning around and traveling back here eastbound in Kendall County. Now, there is no timestamp on that period of time, but the affidavit goes on to list that at 1:41 p.m., a license plate reader captures Brad Simpson's truck re-entering Kendall County. But in that capture, there is no blue tarp in his truck bed, and that firewood rack has been repositioned. Now, at around 3:30 p.m. on October 7th, Brad Simpson is seen back at the Howard Early Childhood Center, picking up his 5-year-old daughter from school. And then the last place listed on the affidavit is right here in this bubble bath car wash in San Antonio, where police in that affidavit say Brad is seen cleaning out the driver's side and the rear left passenger side of his truck, where dried cement splashes were eventually found on his truck. Remember, at the Home Depot, he bought some Quikrete cement that he was using for whatever reason that day on the 7th. And a photo here at the bubble bath car wash also shows a photo of that 30-ounce Clorox disinfectant in the back seat of Brad Simpson's truck. And again, this bubble bath car wash right here in San Antonio is the last place listed in that police affidavit before it jumps ahead to being back at Brad Simpson's home, where he returned after 10 p.m., where authorities were eventually called by Suzanne's friend, responding to reports of Suzanne's disappearance.
And joining me now on the ground in Texas, Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas and former homicide detective who worked high-profile cases in Texas for more than 20 years. Phil Waters is with us as well. Thank you both. Cody, amazing job telling that story and really bringing that affidavit to life so we can kind of see and feel everything that's happening here. Quick question. What are we talking about in terms of time, driving distance from home, that area at home, to the furthest point that he traveled in all of these stops that he made?
So, Vinny, from his home to the furthest stop, that would have been that solid waste dump out in Boerne, Texas. And that was around 40 minutes away. That was no traffic. That was early in the afternoon before the rush of San Antonio, people getting off at around 5 p.m., getting off of work. But all of those things, his home, you know, the area across the street from his home where his daughter went to school, where he dropped her off, all of that is within maybe a 10 to 12-minute drive. The H-E-B store, the Argyle, all of that is kind of in its own bubble in the Olmsted Park community. Now, when it starts getting from there, going out to the Home Depot, going out to the Whataburger, that's when we start talking about 35 to 40 minutes away. So definitely out of the way of his home where he lives, and probably does all his usuals with him and Suzanne before this argument happened in their day-to-day lives.
Phil Waters, you worked so many cases, solved so many cases. Looking at some of the evidence that's been gathered in this affidavit, it seems like this is conduct by the defendant that's beyond suspicious and seems very rich in evidence here.
Well, hey, it's great to be back with you, Vinny. It's been a while. Cody did an amazing job putting that timeline together. That was excellent. And the question that I came up with when I saw it was a great explanation of the ear witness, the eyewitness, the neighbor. And my question was, why didn't that neighbor call the police then? So that's a puzzlement to me, and this may have all been avoided if that had happened. But be that as it may, in terms of the timeline that's been laid out and the evidence that's been shown, the detectives have done an excellent job in establishing affirmative links to what happened that night. And these no-body cases are tough ones to work. I have worked them, but you hit the ground running and you put together these links to show that, yes, this act did happen. Something happened. We're not able to recover the body. The only person that knows where she is our suspect. So it's an interesting case. And he made a lot of, I think the indication here is that this wasn't something that he planned to do. And so he is thinking on the move. And he gets to certain points where it didn't work out like he thought it was going to. He's asking questions, where's the dump? Then he's running into Bandera, then he's running back. So a lot of confusion going on with this guy at that moment in time.
Yeah, and as a former prosecutor, what I like about the evidence that was established and what Cody really brought to life for us was something's happening that night. It's clear and it's not good. It starts at the club and then it goes to the house and then it ends up somehow in the woods and then she disappears. That's called circumstantial. That's asking the jury to say 2 + 2 = 4. And I think that's going to be very, very compelling as we continue to take a look at this case. Phil Waters, great to see you tonight. Coming up next, is there a history of abuse in this relationship?
Well, I came up with an alternative plan for her in the hope that she'd move in with me. I never got to tell her the plan.
How are we doing, guys? We're good? Okay.
You're on very shaky ground.
That is unreal.
People wanted answers, and people started locking their doors.
He pulled the trigger, she was the mastermind.
The shooting seemed personal.
You know what it means. You know what you did, right?
Please hear me out. Please.
I said, OJ, everybody thinks you're guilty.
Oh.
She called me up and told me the things that Brad had done to her physically. Well, I came up with an alternative plan for her in the hope that she'd move in with me. I never got to tell her the plan.
And all this happening we're learning about at the time of the disappearance, people observing some of this behavior, some of this domestic violence behavior between Brad and Suzanne. Now, that brings us to our next question in this investigation, and it's about domestic violence. Is there a history of abuse in the relationship? Like, is this something that had been ongoing, or was this a one-time alleged flare-up and all of that? Still with us, Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas, and joining us, domestic violence expert, former law enforcement officer, and host of the Strong Enough podcast, Claudia King, is with us. Cody, let me ask you about this. From what you've learned about this case, how well known, or was there some sense of a history of this alleged abusive relationship?
Well, Vinnie, based on what I've learned so far, I would lean more on the side of there had to be a history, because before all of this went down, Suzanne had a personal banker that she confided in sometimes, and she told this banker that if she ever went missing, that she needs to check a lake, assuming that her and Brad get into these arguments and they get somewhat dangerous, they get violent. For her to call her mother immediately after Brad assaulted her, telling her that he hurt her arm, hurt her neck, hurt her back, or whatever else it may be, and her mom to sit there and try to come up with some alternative plan, that doesn't seem to me like a real first-time offense. You know, it just feels like as if this was kind of ongoing. The child going to school, telling their teacher or the counselor that her dad had assaulted Suzanne, and Brad taking Suzanne's phone. That it doesn't seem like a first-time thing based on what I've learned.
Claudia, I want you to take a look at what Cody was talking about here from the affidavit. A Texas Ranger interviewed a Frost Bank employee who was Suzanne's personal banker, and she disclosed that Suzanne made an outcry of being physically abused by the defendant, and the defendant would commonly take her cell phone away. She also told her that the defendant would tell their children that she had lost the phone after taking it, and that Suzanne Simpson advised her that if she went missing, look for me in a lake. Claudia King, what are your thoughts about what's going on in this relationship, and what's the significance here of this cell phone? It seems a lot of it is focused around the cell phone.
The significance of the cell phone is control. And so it's clear that Brad would take that phone away when he wanted to gain additional control of Suzanne. So possibly when they were in an argument, maybe when she was threatening to leave, he would take that phone away from her, because for so many of us, our phone really is our lifeline. And so he was essentially pulling away her lifeline at any time that he thought he might be losing control, so that he could gain that back essentially with her phone.
Now, I want you to take a look at a text from Brad Simpson, okay, he's the defendant in this, to Elizabeth Taylor Thomas. This is September 17th, 2023. And he writes, I still feel bad about tonight. I never should have grabbed her phone and drove off, but she was so protective of it. My dumb bleep didn't know her passcode, so I got locked out and had to bring it back. I really have no interest in looking through her phone or anybody else's. These devices are the devil. One more from the affidavit. Elizabeth Taylor Thomas told the Texas Ranger Golden that Suzanne Simpson was aware that the defendant would track her, and the defendant was extremely jealous. So we've got two things working here, Claudia. Extreme jealousy, tracking his own wife, and then referring to the cell phone as the devil. Put those pieces together for us.
These are the pieces of a domestic abuser, you know, tracking her. So he's, again, it's back to that control, Vinnie. He's always got to be in control. He has to know where she is at every single moment. He has to know where her phone is. He has to, you know, probably wants to learn her passcode so that he can get into her phone. These devices are the devil, because it's going to be part of what I think is going to help convict him of her murder. But again, it goes back to the control. It's a clear sign of domestic abuse that he wanted to get that phone, he wanted to track her, and he wanted to know what she was doing at all times.
Yeah, a lot of insecurity. A lot of insecurity. Let me ask you, Cody, have we heard anything about anyone else involved, if it's a love triangle on either side, or is it, or what we're learning so far, just seemingly a very jealous husband?
I think you hit the nail on the head right there in the latter, Vinny. It seems like we're just dealing with a very jealous husband. We haven't heard on either side whether there was someone else involved, whether it was a woman or a man. We didn't hear anything from any family members, anything in any police documents. It just seems like, as Claudia is mentioning, erring on the side of just a controlling husband who wants complete control over his wife, and when he doesn't get his way, violent things like this come up.
And you know what else is absolutely tragic and sad, but it seems some of this behavior, Claudia, is happening in front of their young child.
Yeah, it's incredibly sad because violence begets violence. And when a child grows up in that, then quite often they either become abusive or abused. And so it's so important to, at some point, try to end that cycle of violence, because now this child who has experienced it has a much higher chance of growing up in one of those two categories, and in the end being in an unhealthy relationship or series of unhealthy relationships.
Cody, we have about 15, 20 seconds left here. Is there any record of any prior police calls for domestic violence that we've come across yet?
None at all, Vinny. None at all. There's no record of any of that. As far as we know, this could be a first-time thing, but as we see, as you just read, there's been some history years prior, even in 2023.
Yeah, but never having to make the call. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Either she doesn't call, or he's in such control, or she's so afraid. Claudia King, great to have your insight and expertise. Strong Enough is the podcast. Please check it out, folks. Coming up next, what is the evidence against Brad Simpson? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the disappearance of Suzanne Simpson, a woman who complained to family members about being the victim of domestic violence. Now, the man she was accusing of domestic violence has been charged with her murder, her husband. Here's the story. Suzanne and Brad Simpson were married. However, some family members close to the couple believe Brad was physically abusing Suzanne. Then one night in October, Brad and Suzanne went to a private function at a very exclusive club. Afterwards, they got into a loud shouting match. Then Suzanne disappeared, gone, and suspicion immediately fell on Brad. And after an extensive investigation, including eyewitnesses, surveillance video, and phone data retrieval, Brad was arrested for Suzanne's murder. But still, to this day, Suzanne's body has not been recovered. So her body hasn't been recovered. Obviously, that is, another mountain to climb for prosecutors in the case, but it's not impossible. There are a lot of cases that are prosecuted without a body, but you need to prove that a murder took place. You need to prove that someone is no longer alive. And that brings us to our next question in the investigation. No, let's do this. Let's take a listen to the chief first from the Almost Park PD, because I want to take a listen to him at the moment that they decide to charge the husband with the murder.
Yesterday, the Almost Park Police Department, along with the Texas Rangers, have charged Brad Chandler Simpson with murder in the death of his wife, Suzanne Clark Simpson. We realize that this doesn't bring closure to Suzanne's family, but we hope it will allow them to enter the next phase of their grieving process with more clarity.
So that's step one, right? Charging, but then you've got to prove it. And to prove it, you've got to convince the jury. And that brings us to our next question in the investigation, which is, what is the evidence against Brad Simpson? How are they going to prove, number one, that she's no longer alive? Number two, that he's the one responsible for it? Joining me on the ground in Texas, Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas and former DEA Senior Special Agent David Katz is with us as well. I want to read this part of this affidavit first before we begin this discussion, because I think there's some important stuff in here. Albert Bert Hernandez, who resides directly across the street from Suzanne Simpson, from the Simpson residence, stated he witnessed the defendant and Suzanne loudly arguing after 10 p.m. on Sunday, October 6, 2024, in the front yard of the residence. He stated he saw the defendant and Suzanne physically struggling with each other. Hernandez stated that Suzanne Simpson broke free from the defendant's grasp and ran away from the defendant in a westerly direction. The defendant started running after Suzanne Simpson and was trying to grab her. Hernandez told me later he heard screams coming from the wooded area across from his home. Cody, I know you've been there, you've walked the ground, but is there any indication after the screams from the woods of Suzanne being seen or heard from anyone or being alive? Any proof of life after those screams from the woods that we know about?
No proof of life at all, Vinny. In fact, the last time she was actually seen any kind of way in person was a snapshot outside of the Argyle as she was leaving October 6th, 2024. And to your point about Albert Hernandez, who lived across the street, he reported those screams, then everything fell silent. And then after about 11 p.m. that night, he says he heard Brad Simpson's truck leave the area. Gets quiet again. You know, he ran back in the house, tried to find a flashlight. He came back, didn't see them out there. But then around midnight, he hears the truck come back, but there's still no sign, no proof of life of Suzanne Simpson at all.
David Katz, with this information, do you suspect that you can gather any physical evidence from the potential scene of the murder, if you believe the murder took place in the woods or maybe later in the house? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, with 100% certainty. There's no way a person like this suspect can eradicate the signs of a murder, especially if, as it seems, there was some attempt to I don't mean to be gruesome, but to treat the body in a way that would make it easier to dispose of. There's going to be massive amounts of forensic evidence, and indeed, if what we're hearing in the reports is true, they already are well on the way to establishing that.
Let's go to another piece of the affidavit, which is rich with so much information. The school counselor spoke to Officer Tubbs and relayed that the 5-year-old child of missing person Suzanne Simpson, this started as a missing persons case, stated that on Sunday evening, 10/6/24, her dad, the defendant, had pushed her mother against the wall, hit physically her mother on the face, and hurt her mother's elbow inside their residence. According to the child, the defendant also turned off her mother's phone because they were fighting. Cody, this child, 5 years old?
5 years old. That's exactly right, Vinny. She is the youngest of 4 children that the Simpsons have, and she's actually the daughter on the morning of October 7th that Brad Simpson was seen at her preschool, kindergarten school, dropping her off that morning before he embarked on a journey across San Antonio out to Boerne, Texas, where investigators say on those surveillance videos they have all kinds of stuff in the bed of his truck, all kinds of suggestive things. And then later on in that day, they don't see any of those things in the bed of his truck anymore. And he picks his daughter up from school that same day. So the idea that if he's done something, as David just mentioned, to tamper with the body of Suzanne, it's kind of hard to imagine you could do that to the mother of your 4 children and drop your youngest daughter off and pick her up on the same day that you're allegedly doing this.
That's cold. That's cold. Let me ask you, David, this is great eyewitness testimony, but it's a 5-year-old. You know, inside a courtroom, that could be a little problematic, but it seems that there's some sort of altercation inside. That may be the best way to garner some evidence from this incident if you have physical evidence that can corroborate what a 5-year-old is saying.
You know, 5-year-olds can tell the truth. 5-year-olds are impressionable, and they're not, they may not be as sophisticated as we would like them to be with the way they communicate, but they certainly see things and can recount things, and clearly this child did. So it's not just the 5-year-old. We have the neighbor, we have other incidents, we have the person who worked at the bank. We have a lot of people suggesting this was an abusive relationship, which is very important to establish state of mind, because Mr. Rogers doesn't just have a wonderful, idyllic relationship with his wife. He's the perfect husband and wakes up one day and kills her. If that's in fact what happened, it's almost incomprehensible to see a case where there is no prior abuse. And this is going to be very, very important to laying the foundation.
Back to the affidavit, October 7th, 2024, the next day, Whataburger, Kendall County. Surveillance video shows Brad's truck go through the drive-through. The truck bed includes 3 white trash bags, large gray heavy-duty trash can, an ice chest, a large bulky item wrapped and secured in a blue tarp with a silver metal firewood rack on top of it in a manner to conceal and weigh the tarp down. Let me go to the next part as well. October 7th, 2024, the Home Depot, Bernie in Kendall County. Surveillance footage shows Brad purchasing 2 bags of Quickcrete cement, orange Home Depot construction bucket with a lid, a box of heavy-duty trash bags, 30-ounce bottle of Clorox disinfectant spray, insect repellent. Brad approaches a stranger in the Home Depot parking lot, asks for directions to the nearest dump in Bernie. Cody, lay this out for us. This Whataburger and the Home Depot are close to one another?
They're, excuse me, Vinny, they're almost within feet of each other. There's only the one road, you can see it on your screen right there, right now. That is the only road between the 2 establishments. You could walk from either one. So he was at the Whataburger first. 35, 40 minutes later, he's at the Home Depot buying all the things you just listed. So maybe stopped to get a little bite to eat before he went and bought all those things, and eventually asked that stranger before heading out to the Kendall County solid waste dump. But yes, they are very, very close in proximity to each other.
David, to me, this stuff is extremely suspicious, to say the least. What do you think about the insect repellent? That's the one that's just like everything else I've seen in other cases that I've covered. I've never seen insect repellent purchased at the time of an alleged, cleanup of a crime scene or disposing of evidence. What are your thoughts there?
You obviously have never lived in Texas. So there are, I think it's 70 different kinds of mosquitoes in Texas. And if I don't know where he was traveling to, if he went to the dump, if he went to the lake, as the wife unfortunately suggested to a friend, look for me in a lake, a wooded area, things like that, you're going to get bitten alive. So, I mean, that makes sense if he attempted, if in fact she's gone as we hear from the police, and if in fact he went to a wooded area, that's the reason for the insect repellent. They are ferocious out here.
All right, David Katz is going to stay with us. Cody Thomas, amazing work as always. Cody Thomas on the case. We'll see you again really soon. Still to come, will Suzanne ever be found?
It is our sincere hope and prayer that Brad will find the compassion and courage to end his family's suffering by cooperating with the authorities to help us find his wife.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan.
In every story, in every trial, every case, there's at least 2 sides to it.
To dive into the latest.
Oh my God.
And breaking true crime stories.
This was a very targeted, very personal attack.
Inside.
I've never seen that in Discovery. I've been incarcerated 3 years.
And outside of the courtroom.
She's a psychopath.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Weeknights, 9/8 Central. Only on Court TV.
The situation is heartbreaking for us, but it brings some peace to our family, knowing that the authorities have gathered enough evidence to move forward with charges. This helps us come to terms with the reality that Suzanne is no longer with us.
Investigation and the search for Suzanne continues. There's still information we ask. If the public knows anything, please contact the Olmsted Park Police Department or the Texas Department of Public Safety. The Rangers have not stopped investigating this case, as it has been turned over to the District Attorney's Department, as Mr. Simpson has been charged with murder.
They now begin their work on the prosecution phase of this case. We also want a special thank you to the Department of Public Safety and the Texas Rangers, who have worked tirelessly with us, and we thank them very much, along with all the support from the citizens that we've had.
Suzanne's family really wants two things out of all this, right? They want a sense of justice. They want Brad prosecuted. They believe he's responsible for this, but also they want to get Suzanne back. I want to put this up on the screen. This is from my San Antonio report, and it's about the search for Suzanne. After several days of searching both in and around the Simpson family home in Olmsted Park, and 2 days searching a shopping center in Bernie, investigators set their sights on a landfill on the east side of Bexar County. While case officials showed strong confidence they'd find Suzanne Simpson among the debris compressed and packed at the dump, the search was called off suddenly and without explanation after 4 days. The search would go on for 4 days with a large extractor pulling up debris from a section of the large landfill and delivering it to a horde of police cadets in hazmat gear to comb through. In the end, it appears no physical evidence of Suzanne Simpson was uncovered, which brings us to the next question in our investigation, which is, will Suzanne ever be found? How do you find her? How do you recover her remains? Back with us, former DA, Senior Special Agent David Katz, and former homicide detective working high-profile cases in Texas for more than 20 years, Phil Waters. Phil, what are your thoughts about that? Do you believe Suzanne will ever be found? And if so, what is the key at this point?
Well, that's always the hope, and the key is going to be him. He knows where he put her. I think there's a piece of evidence in the court documents that indicate that they found Suzanne's DNA on a reciprocating saw. So that is going to give a hint as to what he may have done with her body. And I know there's an appeal by the family to him to come forward with that information. I'm amazed at the amount of grace that the family is showing to him in an effort to let him know that they still love him, but they do want a measure of justice here, and they want a peace of mind about his sharing with them where he has put Suzanne. So that's always the hope. I know that the no body case that I have, that in fact is going to trial next week, that body has never been recovered. And my hope is that when it gets down to it, that individual is going to talk about a plea and reveal where that body is. So the key to this thing is it lies in the lap of the suspect in this case.
David Katz, as we look at what was in the back of that truck and where he was going, he's asking directions about the dump. So obviously they're going to the landfill. But we talked about the insect repellent he was getting. She was talking about, look for me in a lake. He had cement, a tarp. What's going through your mind about where Suzanne could be?
Well, what I'd like to know is why they pinpoint the dump for their search. Is it because he made that statement to the individual in the parking lot, or did they have as he going past the license plate reader? Did his vehicle have any, he may have shut his cell phone off, but like OnStar, for example, a lot of vehicles have basically the same equivalent as an internal part of the computer system. So why did they go to the dump, and why did they cancel the search abruptly? So it's very possible that the dump was a red herring if they have nothing else. And then you look at what he had. First of all, I read the report of the evidence on the reciprocating saw, which reminded me of a no-body case we had in the 1990s back in New York City. Was a drug trafficker. I was peripherally related to that case, but if that is in fact the case, he's got a bucket, he's got cement. What does that indicate to the average person? You don't have to be a law enforcement officer. You think about water, you think about weighing things down. So that's a possibility. Maybe they track this vehicle to a body of water, which would again, back up why you're having insect repellent, because as you get closer to water, your contact with mosquitoes goes up exponentially.
Yeah, Phil, this is such. So many victims' families I've spoken to through the years, and I'm sure you have as well. It's so important for them to have their loved one back so they can rest in peace. And you mentioned, as a plea bargain, and that's always a possibility. If that doesn't come through, Phil, is there ever a point that you stop looking, that you give up hope of ever finding that body?
No, I can only speak from my experience. I know that families don't, and I didn't. And I'm still hopeful with the case that I have that he's going to do, the suspect in that case the defendant is going to do the right thing. And you always hope and pray for that outcome. So don't ever, I've never seen anyone that gave up any kind of hope about recovering the remains so that person can be shown some proper respect in a burial with a family gathering.
The thoughts of that saw and dismembering the mother of your children, but it happens. We know it happens, David, because we've covered stories like this before. You have. In these relationships, we know emotion gets the best of everyone. But this didn't seem to be a planned, premeditated murder. I don't think they're going to allege that. It was a flare-up. There was an argument. There was a fight. There was anger. There was emotion. And I just got to think that he's going to make, or did make, some big mistake somewhere that may help here.
No, yeah, there's no doubt. They have the trove of evidence. I mean, when you act precipitously in the heat of passion, look, I'm not excusing it. The guy's a monster if he did this. I mean, to me, the lowest form of human life are men who abuse women and children. But they already have evidence. They already have DNA. You look at what he did buying a bottle of bleach. And why? What? I mean, really. He's probably watched a bunch of episodes of CSI, and he's attempting to eradicate signs of evidence, but he's not going to be able to do it. There's going to be something he did, something he missed, and my doubt, I have no doubt they already have that.
And the other part is where you are, right, Phil? It's much more rural. You're not in the middle of a city, so there aren't necessarily license plate readers everywhere. So this is a guy who turned off his phone and didn't want anyone to know exactly or precisely where he was going, and that's the challenge.
Well, it is, and look, they found him burning up laptops and cell phones. So, and he's charged with tampering with evidence, felony tampering with evidence. So, I tell you, I'll use the word that David just used. It's a treasure trove here of evidence. The detectives, the Texas Rangers, have done a fantastic job in this investigation and gathering the evidence that's necessary, and they put this case together, and it will not stop with his arrest. There will be a continuing follow-up on everything that they have found until they have mined everything that they can possibly get evidence. Yeah.
Great job tonight, guys. David Katz, Phil Waters, great to have your experience and your expertise. We appreciate it. Money cannot buy peace or happiness. Domestic violence, unfortunately, has no boundaries. In the case of Brad and Suzanne Simpson, it seems those closest to the couple believe this is the key to uncovering what happened. But I don't expect Brad to necessarily concede to domestic violence, because if he does, he's admitting to murder. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.